All right, moving over to the heavyweight division now. We got Vitor Petrino coming in at minus 250 going up against Steven Asplund, who comes in at plus 210. Now, Petrino has a 2-fight winning streak since moving up to heavyweight. The first win coming against Austin Lane, where he got him to the ground pretty easily and was eventually able to find that finish at the ending of the first round. And then he went up against Thomas Peterson, where he was able to score a nasty third-round knockout win. Now, that was one of those fights where I backed the big plus money on Peterson because I thought his wrestling and his cardio edge could possibly cause Petrino problems and really start to pull away in deep water. First round, Petrino was able to win pretty decisively by hurting Peterson numerous times. Somehow Peterson ended up surviving. Peterson had better success in round 2 where 2 judges actually scored that round for Peterson. And I was feeling pretty good about Peterson as a big dog going into that third round, feeling as though should it have hit the third round, it would be a Peterson-looking fight, and it was trending that way. But then within the first, I think it was 26 seconds, Petrino landed a nasty uppercut and a hook combination that put Peterson flat out. Absolutely nasty knockout there for Petrino to earn his second win as a heavyweight in the UFC. Now, at 28 years old, he's still young enough to continue growing and getting better experience and trying to crack into that heavyweight contendership, especially considering how, shallow that heavyweight division is. I think Petrino could make a pretty big splash if he continues to rack up some of these knockout wins. He has big power. He's worked on his grappling game a ton, which is why he's been able to pull off that submission win against Austin Lane. Even had one earlier, I forgot against I want to say Marcin Prachnio or Modestas Bukowskis. I can't recall who the other guy he got a submission win over, but clearly working on that aspect of his game. I think heavyweight might be the better spot for him. He's pretty big for 205. He's filling out heavyweight pretty well. Very big, very strong. He'll probably have a bit of a speed advantage against a lot of these guys, and that could help his power translate in some of these matchups as well. One thing I do want to touch on, there is something circulating about him having an injury to his right hand. I don't think it's something that's going to cause him too much issue in this matchup against Asplund, but again, we'll get to that in the prediction side, but I do want to touch on that considering that's picked up a little bit of steam over the last 24 hours. Now, he's going up against Steven Asplund, who's on a 4-fight winning streak, including that big knockout win that he had on the Contender Series to earn his way into the UFC. He knocked out then CFFC champion Anthony Gracio, and Asplund found himself as a pretty big underdog that night because a lot of people thought that as soon as Gracio touched Asplund, Asplund's lights would go out. But it was the other way around. Asplund had the better technique. He got to the target a lot quicker, and that resulted in him getting that 16-second knockout and obviously that UFC contract. Then he made his debut as he took on Sean Sharaf. Very fun matchup there where we saw both these guys throwing down. It was eventually a jab in near the ending of that first round or halfway through that first round that cut open Sharaf and had him leaking badly. One of the more bloodier fights that we saw last year. And then Asplund just knew that the moment would come for him to show Sharaf the door, and he was able to muster up that TKO finish with the barrage of shots in the second round. And that's Asplund at his best. He's a good boxer, slick combinations, decent hands. He loves to mix it up in the pocket. He loves to try to pressure his opponents and try to finish him with their hands. He tries to get them to the ground and try to have some success there. But I think at most he is best when he can strike and strike freely. But I think of his lack of athleticism and strength will cause him issues against tougher opponents. He can beat the Hammer Mortons and Raiden Kovacs of the world and even Sean Sharaf. But we saw one in his lone defeat against Denzel Freeman, a guy that was athletically way more gifted than him, much stronger than him. Freeman was able to have his way with Asplund and eventually get I believe it was a second round rear naked choke that night. So Asplund will eventually fight those types of guys in the UFC, and I think he's fighting one of those this weekend in Vitor Petrino. Hence why Petrino finds himself as a minus 250 favorite. Before I recorded, Petrino was roughly around minus 220. So just in the last hour or so here on Monday evening, we see Petrino taking more action, and I think rightfully so. Asplund, if he can drag this into deeper water, maybe he could have the success that Peterson should have had in the third round. But I really think Petrino is going to get Asplund to the ground, and I think before we know it, he'll be able to get to a position to find that finishing spot. Whether it's a submission, whether it's a TKO, I just do not think Asplund is good enough on the ground yet to contend against a guy like Petrino who can smother him there. On the feet, the output, the volume, the possible cardio advantage of Asplund could cause Petrino some problems, but I think that early power of Petrino can help him mask takedowns or even land a big shot and put Asplund out that way. So I like Petrino here. I don't mind him at chalk. I'll be curious to see what the submission prop sits at when those props drop, but I like Petrino here, and I'm going to take him to win this fight by submission.